What's up, homie?
Not much.
We're far away.
Yeah, we are. Actually, it's kind of weird.
It is. It's too far. Now I feel like I'm interrogating you.
Yeah. What did you do to that component? Should I just open it?
Yeah, let's just get started.
Okay, let's get right into it.
Cool.
I've been working on an app that's a. Do you know what Stable Diffusion is? Have you heard of that?
I've heard of it. I actually don't know what it is.
So it's pretty amazing. It's a AI tool for generating artwork. So you give it a string, and it gives you back an image.
Okay, so panda in space or something?
Mm-hmm.
Like a panda in space.
Yeah,
like, okay.
Exactly. The hello world is always like an astronaut on a horse on Mars, something like that. It's all like command line. And so one of the things you run into is you're just like, it's hard to edit the command line. Like you're like hitting up, you're changing things, you're rerunning, you're getting like these outputs. It's just hard to keep track of everything. So I made a web app.
Oh, cool.
Like what any web developer would do.
Nice.
I made a web app to manage it, to run it, which is, turns out like web browsers are really good at displaying images.
Yeah.
So it works out really, really well.
Wow, cool. What'd you make it with?
Next 13.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Server components, Next 13. Prisma, which I'm digging Prisma with Next 13. Nice combo. One of the cool things though is I've just been putting animation everywhere because of the Framer Motion course. Like I was thinking about this, and this isn't just like an ad. Like this is true.
Yeah.
Adding animation is like almost as easy as like adding CSS.
Yeah.
Like imagine you didn't know CSS and you looked at a beautiful website. You'd be like, I can't do that. Like I can't add color to a web page, but like you never think that.
Right.
Because you know CSS.
Right. It's like the first time you learn it and you realize you can just open DevTools on like apple.com.
Yeah.
And change things.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm kind of feeling that way with the Framer Motion stuff. There's a few things like every time I make a list, I just wrap it in animate presence and I do an X animation. And like my default X animations are opacity and then scale from like 1 to like 0.9.
Right.
And it's just really nice. It just shrinks and fades out.
Right.
So I thought
that's cool.
That was really cool.
That's good.
Pulled the image gallery in there. Tweaked it a little.
Oh.
Yeah. There's a lot of cool, like when you actually have a whole bunch of images you want to go through. Yeah.
What do you save, like your history of like queries or something?
Yeah, I save all the images and output. So sorry,
Are you using Hasura? No, you're not.
No.
Just, what are you running your database on? Oh, you haven't like deployed it yet.
I'm using SQLite with Prisma.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And you haven't deployed it yet?
No.
But you could.
Well, so it runs on a Mac. Because the Stable Diffusion stuff is written for the one
you're
that
running
I'm using.
Stable Diffusion locally. You're not hitting an API. You're not using like a service.
I have a Swift app that I pass my first Swift app. Apple published a Swift app and a Swift library for running all this stuff.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I've been in there tweaking stuff. All the tweaks I've made have been like, there's some gnarly, like, core ML code that I have not touched, but like I've like changed like parameters and stuff like that.
Wow. So what do you have, like an API route that like calls a shell command?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
exactly. So I want to make the Swift app a web server.
Okay.
Which I can do.
Yeah.
But for now I'm just, shell command.
Are there any services you can hit with like fetch?
There are.
Not necessarily that was
there
the point
are,
of this, but
dude, the M1, like, the services are too slow.
Oh.
So the M1, you can just spit out.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So you can and you can await it.
Yeah.
You can await it.
Dude, it's awesome.
So you don't even have to poll or anything like that.
I do poll for the front end. So I think in like Next API routes, they want you to finish in like 30 seconds.
Serverless constraints.
So,
even though on your own computer it won't matter, but you're just trying to.
I also want to I have a whole process that basically watches it. So you start generating a new image, you write a bunch of data to a database, and then I have a process that reads from that database and then fires off Swift code. And from there, then the Swift code comes back and writes back to the database.
Do you start running the Swift code on like chunks of the image or something, or you wait until the image is done?
The Swift code takes the text and gives you back an image. And gives you back an image. So then I feed the image back into the database.
This is cool, man.
Yeah, it's fun, man. It's been a really, really fun app to work on.
That's fun.
And with a lot of images, well, I guess I should say this first, is that Stable Diffusion is like, it is not like, it doesn't just give you what you want. You have to generate hundreds of images and
for the same input?
For the same input.
Okay.
And you'll get like, I don't know, 4 or 5 like really good ones. Let's say you generate like 400 images. You'll get like 4 or 5 really good ones, and then maybe like 40 like okay ones. Like, yeah, I could work. I could work with that.
They'll have like arms growing out of their legs or something.
Yeah, stuff like you can like do a good job at eliminating that stuff, but just some things like it's a little blurry or a little too detailed.
Do you follow Levels IO on Twitter?
Yeah.
You know how he's been doing the avatar stuff? Yeah. He's like, me pats myself on the back, really getting this model right. And then he shows like a picture of a girl in a bikini with like her front side facing this way and her butt showing in the wrong way. That's pretty funny. Anyway, so okay,
yeah,
there's some trial and error.
You get a lot of like, you're generating like a picture of an office and like, I don't know, like half of it is just like broken. Like it's just broken. Yeah, like, it's just like stuff falling out of the wall. And it's blurry.
A tree growing out of it.
Yeah,
it's like a scene from Inception or something.
Exactly. So there's a lot of let me basically like scrub through 100 images and delete the ones I don't want as quickly as possible and keep like save and maybe tag the ones I like. And then I also have a thing where I can like regenerate them. So if I get an image that's like 95% of the way there, I can take the exact inputs that went into that image. So there's like some randomization.
So are you randomizing? Okay. Are you randomizing inputs?
Yeah. So you give Stable Diffusion a seed.
And every time in your version, when you generate a new thing, you seed it. It's just like Faker. You could seed it and then you can choose the seed if you want to reproduce it.
Exactly.
Oh, cool.
And then you can also you can tell it not only give me a seed, but give me back a bunch of different generations from that seed.
Okay.
And then I really like generation 64.
Okay.
So let me just focus in on that one. This was a Swift code that I had to modify.
Okay, cool.
Let me dig in on that. So,
kind of reminds me of my brother's, have you ever seen his artwork before? Nate's artwork?
Yeah.
The strange attractor stuff.
No.
It's a similar kind of thing where it's a class of mathematical function that's very sensitive to initial parameters. And so the way he would create the art would be to start with a model, generate a bunch, pick one that's pleasing. It has a uniform distribution, takes up a lot of percentage of the panel. And then he would start with that and then start tweaking that one.
That is exactly what this process is. So I use one of the places where I use animation and framer motion is as I'm scrubbing through all those photos, I have just keyboard shortcuts. So I can go next, delete, and I can just power through.
Oh, cool.
And this is the thing before I had the web app and I'm just using the CLI, it's very hard to do that. Cause
is that what led to the creation of the web app?
Yeah, okay. Exactly. Cause you're opening up Finder, you're hitting space for preview. You're I kind of like that one. You're oh crap, what was a prompt? What was the seed? What was the, which image was that from the group that the seed generated? So web app tracks all that.
Very
delete,
cool.
Tag. Yeah. It's been fun. And I'm telling you, man, the animation stuff
is a game changer. It's one of those examples of the UI turns something into an actually usable interface, a usable piece of software for this purpose. Whereas even though you could say the terminal app has the same functionality, it's enabled a completely different workflow.
Oh, it's to the point where the terminal app, I'd maybe generate a batch of 100 images. And this, I'm okay, I'm going to generate 2,000 images and then I'll come back and just fly through them.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it's fun.
I love that.
Just little things with the animations. If I'm keeping an image, I kind of just scroll it off the screen. But when I delete an image, I push it down off the bottom of the screen. So just
that's awesome.
Fun little things. So anyway, I ran into a bunch of I don't know how to animate these things. So I wanted to ask you, and I just wanted to kind of provide all that context for what we're working on. So
before you put me on the spot.
Yeah.
Here we go. It's a challenge.
So one of the things with framer motion that's really easy to do is if I know that I'm animating something from this part of the screen to that part of the screen, it's just super easy. it's just a continuous animation from like point A to point B.
Mm-hmm.
But what about if like those values are constantly updating? So this came up in 2 spots. One is like I have a progress bar.
Mm-hmm.
And so the progress bar for Stable Diffusion, when you first start running it, it's a little inaccurate, but after a few seconds, it starts to get accurate. So how do I like animate? Like if I told you right now, it's like 1%, then 2 seconds, it's 3%, and then 2 seconds, it's 6%. Like, how do I animate that? Because like, say my animation is, I don't know, like it's a linear animation.
Mm-hmm.
Like what's the duration that I use?
Mm-hmm.
If I use a constant duration,
mm-hmm.
like from 1 second to 2 seconds,
Right.
it's going to go like this, but then it's going to go faster
Right.
because we just went from 2 to 6. So there's more distance it's traveling.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yep. I would do something. I would just copy what other folks do. I think Google and maybe some others call that like indeterminate loading state. It's something of an indeterminate loading state, I guess. Or if you're installing an app, you might know it's 30% done, but you don't know, how long it takes, or if the amount of time from 0 to 30 is going to be the same from 30 to 60.
It's like it's close enough that it's really good for ballparking.
Yeah,
but
okay.
It's not
So,
exact.
Yeah. So then a couple of things just thinking off the top of my head. First, you could just jump to the percentages. Like,
That's actually what I ended up doing, but I don't like it
doesn't
because
look
the rest of the app has all these nice
it kind of blows
animations.
the immersion
and then you
of it.
see, see the progress bar. It's
And
like
it
the one
just-
thing that should be animated.
Yep. There is, there's also like when you see loaders like this on like install screens on like Mac, the bar itself shows that something's happening, even if the edge of the bar is changing like this. So that is another idea where there's like a pulsing happening, and then it's just the length that changes.
Okay.
But no, you could just animate the distance, and you can just divide the change in percentage. So you have like basically maybe you would drop down to like the animation controls, because that makes it pretty easy to change things like the duration and the percentage without trying to keep it all declarative, which is fine. So you have like an effect that watches or a callback on chunk received or progress received. And then you have your controls that you got from use animation. And then you just say animate dot start. It's like stateful in the sense that it's going to start off with whatever the width percentage. I'm guessing you're doing width.
Yeah, exactly.
So the current bar is like width 20%, and you say you have controls dot start, and then you pass an object with width 30. It'll go from 20 to 30. Mm-hmm. And then you can also pass in the transition and then as part of dot start. So I would just do like, you can either ballpark it, or, you could just say, let's say it takes about 20, this thing takes what, 10 seconds, the whole 0, 100%, 30 seconds?
For one image,
30 seconds?
20 seconds.
20 seconds. So just do 20 times begin minus end, so if it's 10, it's 10, 1/10 times 20, and then just throw that in for the duration. And then I would probably use a linear, type tween ease linear. And then it'll just move that time. And then if it gets there and there hasn't been another chunk, it'll stop. And that's why I think like
having some
it's like,
pulsing.
Exactly.
They
or
do
like the
like
bars,
the
slits that move.
Yep.
Or you have a cool pulsing thing that shows it's still moving. You could also, what I've also done is, if you think about like the end progress stuff kind of thing that like YouTube uses, if you didn't want to do the pulsing thing, you could basically give yourself a percentage or two. So, or maybe like, let's say you need to move it by 10 basis points, right? 10 percentage points. And so you, instead of going from like 10 to 20 at whatever that would be, 2 seconds, taking 2 seconds to go from 10 to 20, maybe you take 2 seconds to go to 19. And then you just do like like a 10-second animation from like 19 to 20. You could do this with keyframes. So you could animate from like, you could basically do 0 to like 19 to 20. And then for the times property, which is like how much time should pass between these, you could do like 99% of the way here.
It's like 0.91.
Yes, exactly. Because then it gets to 19 and then it just moves really slowly. So that would be another way to communicate to the user like progress is still happening.
Cool. And
you see that a lot with the end progress.
Get to the 19, I might also get an update by then.
Yes. And then you would restart the whole thing, which would be fine. So then it would jump.
Yep.
And that's fine too. And that's kind of like how the end progress thing works on like YouTube, because it's basically like indeterminate in a sense.
Yeah.
So that's another idea. I think that would look pretty good. And I've done that before and it looks pretty good.
Cool. Yeah, I'll give that a shot.
The other would be like, but I think the progress bars probably feels better. But you could do like you could do a countdown timer, and you could jump it every time you get more, like you update your Bayesian priors, right? So you like start with 30. And then you get a thing that says,
Yep.
And so it's about 20 seconds, 19, 18, and then you update it each time. So that's an option too.
So actually that's I think what I want. Cause I was able to derive how much time is left. So I know there's 2 minutes left. So I could just have it. Okay. This is why I knew you were going to have an answer. So you're basically saying go from 0 to 100 over the course of 2 minutes. And then if I get an update at some point,
you could do that. Yep. You could do that.
Update that animation, like slow down or
you
speed
could do
up.
that. Now, the only thing is like, I wasn't saying that necessarily, but you could do that. If you just kicked off a linear animation from 0 to 100 and it took 20 seconds, and then 10 seconds of the way through the thing, you get an update and find out it's 15 seconds, you might have to do some work so it doesn't jump back.
Okay.
Right? So
you never want to see,
you wouldn't want to see it jump back. That would be bad. So you could just pause. You could wait. You could just stop it. But I was even saying like, it has like 2 minutes remaining in the install or whatever. So you could kick off a 20-second timer that starts going down, and it says about 20 seconds left, and then you just either update it, because people are kind of used to saying, when you go to Dropbox and you upload, it says about 2 minutes remaining, but then sometimes it jumps to 3 minutes or 1 minute, but it gives you a sense. It's a minute. It's not 6. So depending on like what position the user's in and like what information you want to know, if 20 seconds is like, you might want to show something about that because that's pretty long.
I do. Especially if you're generating like a giant batch. Yeah. It's 20 seconds per image. But
exactly. So it might be nice to show a second or a minute.
Yeah, I do. Oh, you do? Okay. But it's not.
You don't update it over time when you get the chunks.
I do update it, but it's not animated. It's it literally says like 5M, 30S, and then it's 4M.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. So you could do that time with like you could even do like about 5 minutes, about 4 minutes, about 3 minutes, and then like once you're under a minute, go to like seconds left. And you could do like a clock that fills in with the progress, which is basically just the same as a progress bar, but some version of that. So yeah,
cool.
That'd be cool. That'd be a fun library to make. What would you want? You'd want a headless version of this where you can pass in updates. Basically, the hardest part of all this is if you go past it and then configuring how you want to handle the in-between.
How you want to go back.
But it'd be cool to be able to receive the updates and then be able to do your own UI, whether you're doing a clock, like installing an app, like a pie chart filling in, or a line. But you could, in theory, have all those, but with like the chunk with the messages coming from the back end. It'd be pretty cool.
That's exactly what I want, is that headless thing where I'm like, I'm at 0% and there's 5 minutes left. And then I give it an update. I'm at 5% and there's 3 minutes left. And it just
So what do you know at the beginning? You're at 0% and you just know through experience and history that it takes about 20 seconds, or does the thing tell you something?
So the way that the way this works is it steps through different images. So it basically starts with a bunch of random noise and then tries to pick the next image that looks like your prompt.
Gotcha.
And then it tells you, okay, from getting that first step, it took, what is it? It's a like, I don't know, 40% of a second.
I see.
400 milliseconds.
I see.
So, and then I basically get those updates. It's at different times, but I would say, every few seconds, maybe I get an update.
Nice. Yeah, I think the API for this would be, you can give it a best guess starting value in terms of seconds remaining. So maybe because you're on your computer and you know how long it takes, or the API can tell you the SDK or whatever, and you can pass it in. So it could be like a prop.
Yep.
And then every time you receive a chunk can update it with whatever information you have, which would be what percentage it's done. And then if it has a better guess of how much seconds are left, then you could update that. And then that hook basically would give you something that updates on an animation frame.
Like a motion value.
A motion value that updates on an animation frame. And then you could bind that to a style, or you could animate between those values, or you could subscribe to on-change. Really, it's not... It would be a hook. And then, so the hardest part is if you said, okay, we just got an update, the percentage is 10, and the time is 30 seconds. Then let's just say it's 50% and the time remaining is 2 seconds. So you start at 0% time is 4 seconds. You get an update 2 seconds later, that's 2 and 50. So it's spot on. And then like 5 seconds pass. So you basically want this decaying behavior where you get closer, you go from 50 and you go like halfway there and you realize like we might be in trouble. And you basically just keep cutting it in half.
Oh, that's interesting.
And because you know less and less. And now it's been 1 second. We're at 75. Like we're less confident because we didn't have an update. And then another second passes. You cut it in half, so you're at 87.5.
There's like a project management joke in here, but yeah.
No, really, yeah, exactly. The last 20% takes 80%. That alone would be pretty cool. And then. That wouldn't be that bad.
Also, just if we ever overshoot and it knows to pause and it doesn't ever move backwards, just having
I don't think you would ever overshoot. I think the way you do it is because you have the distance every time it passes. And it would use it could give you like a suggested duration too. Maybe that would be included. That would probably be included. Honestly, you really just need to turn those numbers into a motion value that goes from 0 to 1 in this way.
Yep.
And it's built into the motion value how long it takes for it to go from 0 to 0.5, 0.5 to 0.75, 0.75 to 8. What is that? 12 and a half. So 8.75, right? 9.3, whatever. And it's right? So your initial prop is 0%. Best guess is it takes 10 seconds. So what do you get back? You get a motion value that takes 5 seconds to animate from 0 to 0.5. 5 seconds has passed. We don't have any more information yet. So now, what does the motion value do? It then decays and it goes from 0.5 to 0.75 over not 2.5 seconds.
5 seconds.
Exactly.
Really good.
Exactly. Takes 5 seconds to go to 0.75.
Most of the time,
we still don't know. So now we're going to take another 5 seconds not to go, you go half of that.
The beautiful thing about this, though, is most of the time we're never going to hit that. Most of the time we are going to get an update and we're just going to get right on track.
So you get, if you get an update, you've taken 2 seconds to go 20%. So you're at 0.2 and you get an update that says, now we're 50% of the way done. And there's a couple things you could do there in terms of the duration from that to the end, because you could either back it out from your initial guess, or you could use updated information to update your belief about how long it's going to take to go from 50 to 100. But let's say we don't know anything else. Well, you told us it was going to take 10 seconds. It only took 2 seconds to get to 50. So now our best guess is it takes 2 seconds to get to 100.
Yeah, that's most likely.
So then you take 1 second to go to 75.
Yep.
You take another second to go to 87 and a half. You take another, right, until you hear it. So you could build that, and you literally get a motion value you could use to animate a circle, a line.
I can pass that right into like the animate
That would
prop,
be,
right?
you could literally pass it into the style prop. You do style equals, and you do width, progress, dot value.
Okay, cool.
And then with a percentage. Because it would be a number from 0 to 1.
Oh, right. And that updates without the re-rendering, and that just, okay, cool.
You could use it for the path length on a circle, on a donut SVG that goes like this, literally like the App Store thing.
Oh.
Like, the clock that fills up. You could use it for a bar. Yeah. That'd be pretty cool.
Do you know that?
That'd be pretty badass, dude. We should
Yeah, that'd be cool.
That'd be a cool one to do.
Another situation where this came up, kind of the same class of problem, is I'm using your image gallery and I'm centering the image. Mm-hmm. But when I resize the window, I want the image to move to its new position. So if you grab the corner of the window and you drag it like constant velocity, zero acceleration, and then you let go, it just works. But that's not how you resize windows.
Yeah.
Like when you grab it with the mouse, you like flick it. Yeah. So the window size is constantly updating. So the image thinks that, okay, like the window just went from 1,000 pixels to 990. So I need to like move myself to the center.
What is it moving?
It's
because in the course we just use Flexbox for everything.
I think it's a layout.
It's using layout animations.
But the problem is that it just looks funny because if you start dragging and then you speed up, the animation, basically the animation.
It animates it.
Yeah.
You must be using layout animation.
Yeah, I want to move it. I want it to move. I don't want it to just jump.
Yeah, so you could do like, I haven't done a bunch of layout animations, but you could.
It's kind of the same class of problem because I don't want
No, you don't want to animate at all. You want the duration to be 0. So I was trying to think about using like a resize hook, use resize hook. It says like if is resizing within the last 100 milliseconds. I was going down. Then is resizing is true and duration is 0.
I was exactly going down that.
That's road. What I think that would be my first guess. Because you don't actually want it to. You don't want it to animate. Or you resize.
There are other spots where
you would want equivalently to having flex, align center, item center, justify center, and then you resize. What happens if you do that in CSS? The browser is recalculating. It's already repainting the window, and so it's going to be recalculating the position of all those things.
Cool.
Yeah.
I wanted the image animated because I have some spots where you like zoom in and you zoom out because there's like little parts of the image that might be off and I want to zoom in to like check them. And so I was animating that, but then I also noticed that those animations were kicking in on resize, but I think it's exactly what you said.
Yeah, duration 0.
I was going down that road of if the window's resizing, just turn like motion config turns everything off.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think I was just running into other stuff. I don't know. We can take a look at it. But it was like kind of the same class in that you have a value that's constantly updating and you don't know how it's going to change in basically the next read of it you get. So.
Right. Cool. It's fun, man. So it's an awesome library.
Yeah.
I was just pairing with someone today and I was doing like the infinite scrolling thing. I hadn't done that yet. And it was like super easy to do. You just do a little math. I remember when I was using frame motion last year sometime when I was like newer to it and I was like trying to move things and I kept getting confused and then you realize you can just use like 100% everywhere strings on properties like X and Y, So then it's like you need an infinite list to just scroll. You just do it and then at the end you can click it right back. So if you have 2 of them, you just do it right here and then you just go here and you just repeat the animation by infinity. That's it. It's like so easy. It's like literally animate X negative 100%, and then repeat infinity. And you just render the list twice. Because then the viewport's in the first version of the list, and then the second one starts showing up And then once you get here, it basically just
pushes it back.
There's probably a cool way to do it, like exit and enters and stuff, but that was like a super easy way to do it.
So you render two lists.
And you
update that
in a row. And then you just shift the container by 100%. You just literally animate the container by 100%. And then if you put transition, repeat, infinity, then as soon as it finishes, it starts over again from the first value, which is 0. That's literally all you have to do. I think there's like a CSS animation, effectively the same thing. When you put you could basically do the same thing. Keyframes from 0 to 100% with infinity repeat. But this is cool because you already have state, and so if you wanted to hover and pause it, you just do that. You just hover and you set some state, and then you adjust the transitions.
So you have a thing scrolling in the background.
Yeah.
You move your mouse over to click on
to stop on it. Exactly.
Yeah.
Or so you can obviously do all that stuff, which is great because you're just already in JavaScript land. You don't have to toggle classes or anything like that. You just it's all right there.
Wait, I have a question. So
go ahead.
Like I said, I'm using it as the 5th time I've said this. I'm using the image gallery. When I get to the last image and I go to the next, I reset the container all the way back to the beginning. Yeah. Should I just render the list of images twice so you can just...
You just kind of swoop and you go back.
Yeah, because what does it do? It updates the X position.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it basically moves a window over that.
It's like the container just is sliding. So you have a known number of images.
Exactly.
It's like an easy way to do it, But you could couple of things you could do. You don't really want to render it twice, I guess, if you have a lot of images.
Yeah, I know.
You could. So if you really want to be, if I was building this for a production, and it was had to deal with unknown number of images, basically what we did with Hassan with the next site, because he took the code from the demo, which had a fixed number of images, and he wanted it to truncate and not render images that weren't visible. So if you were going to do this fully dynamic, you would use the width of the photo, the width of the viewport, calculate how many images are shown, pull that from the array. Right?
Yep.
So you would take a subset of the array of images, and instead of switching the container, you do animate and exit, enter and exit animations.
Gotcha.
So you would calculate the offset. Each one would get something, and they would slide.
Yep.
If they are no longer in the new set, then they slide off to the left or whatever based on the direction. And then once you get you just use mod. So let's say you have a set of 10 images, you get to 11. Whether you show it's just index mod 11.
It's basically you have your array. You have your array of all your images, and then you have a derived array of on screen. And that's actually that's actually better too, because then you can think about it in terms of data structure.
Yeah.
Without worrying about the viewport stuff or any of that stuff.
The viewport would only be needed to know how big the derived array is.
The view should be.
Yeah.
But cool.
Yep. So it could be 9, 10, 1, 2, 3 would be one of your derived things, and you would so that would be the most robust way to do it, but it's definitely more complicated, which is why if you have a limited set, you just do the containers so easy. Also, dude, if you think about how hard this is also hard. Do you remember us doing the calendar?
Yeah. Well, I ran into that.
It's the same thing. So now think about it. If you have an infinite monthly calendar and you have a mini map the way you do on iOS, and you're doing enter and exit animations, but then I look at the mini map and I go from October, last year's July, right? Right now we're only showing 2 months because that's what's in the viewport. So from that example we were just talking about, it's just the 2 months that you just recreate and add and remove. But now if you want to scroll to these 2 months, you have to render everything in between and scroll the whole way. So you could do it, but in the photo gallery from the course, everything's already rendered. So you literally you get all of that behavior for free. We add the thumb strip and you go from 10 to 1, the whole thing just slides because the active index times 100% already accounts for all of that.
Is a thumb strip what you call the little viewer?
Yeah, the little viewer, the little thumbnails.
Yep.
The thumbnails on the bottom.
Oh, okay.
On the bottom.
Okay.
I'm just saying if you skip photos, to have the animation both work and be interruptible in that case. I mean, imagine coding an interruptible animation that you go from October to last July, and then while that's happening, you now need to jump to, next June or something. Mm-hmm. So if you have to render those months in between in both times, preserve like the velocity. When you animate the container in the months, in the photo gallery case, and you interrupt it, if you're using a spring animation, which we do, frame of motion preserves the velocity and the acceleration, all those stateful aspects of the transition being used for you. So it's interruptible. So that's why if you can get away with that, it's like a lot better to do that.
Yeah, I think like one of the largest sets I rendered with the gallery might have been 400, 500 images. And I was totally fine.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So
the other thing I was going to say about the scrolling case is not the scrolling case, but the infinite scroll, like the infinitely moving thing where you have the two sets or whatever. He has an example on his site where why you might want to do this in frame of motion instead of just slapping a CSS animation. First is because if you want to interact with JavaScript at all, so any sort of interaction where you hover or click on it, you move your mouse close and it stops so you can click on it. He has one where you have these two versions of like the frame of motion logo kind of all next to each other, just infinitely scrolling like this, right? They're just going like this. And then as you scroll, if you scroll, the momentum makes them move faster. And then the scroll stops and they slow down. So you're scrolling and they like go, and then you change direction scrolling and they start going the other way. So like you scroll and it goes like this.
Wow.
And he has a use like animation frame or something like that where, dude, it's crazy. Like what you can do when you compose these things is nuts. And like some of those examples are still like whenever you first look at them, they're just wild, right? Like I remember the first time I looked at the photo gallery last year when we were looking at that. Remember the one where the really cool one he has? It was like inscrutable, but like, you just have to stare at it long enough. But this one has a use scroll, so it gives you a motion value. But the motion value doesn't just give you the position in the document that the document has been scrolled. It gives you things like the derivative of position. So it gives you the momentum and the velocity. It gives you momentum values.
So you can see the change.
So the change and the change of the change, right? And he has a use animation function. It's basically like an effect, but it's like on every render frame that he uses to adjust the velocity of the marquee lines based on the additional momentum from the scroll. It's pretty crazy.
Cool. Does like bring back
it's pretty crazy
high school physics?
No, totally.
You have what time, velocity, acceleration,
right? Each is the derivative of the next. Yeah. Yep. Because if you scroll it, you only care about when it's moving, so you only care about the change in position, which I guess is the acceleration, right? Change in velocity is the acceleration.
Yeah. Yep.
So like you can be a third of the way down the page or 2/3, and if you're stopped, they're both going to be, the marquee is going to be moving at the same rate. But as you go between them is when the acceleration changes. So basically he's adding and removing the delta to acceleration. The delta to acceleration, which would be, I guess, a third derivative of position.
It's really cool.
Yeah, it's super cool. Yeah, it's pretty crazy, dude. And it's also like 10 lines of code. It's just pretty sweet. So that just made me think of that when you were talking about one of those things. But yeah, man, cool stuff. It's like that's a cool thing. It's low level enough that it is, it's like learning, like you were saying, trig or geometry or something, because that's what's so nice about it. It's like Tailwind in that sense, right? Where you're not learning you're not learning how to make this well, like a bootstrap well, and all the ways I can customize it. I'm learning how to build a well on my own or anything else that I'll need, right? In the same way with frame of motion, it's like, wait, there's no chart. There's no like frame of motion.chart.create, No, it's because you learn how to build a chart or a resizable panel or whatever, So cool stuff.
Dude, it's awesome. It is really cool that, I said that like I just add these animations to like elements. Like if I'm animating a list, I add animate presence and exit animation. It's really cool that I can kind of like brain dead do that.
Yeah.
Just animate presence, opacity, scale.
Yep.
But then you can also get into the really advanced stuff that you're talking about.
Yep.
It's not like you kind of can choose like go deep or just stay like surface level.
I actually think it is a similar problem with Tailwind that I've seen folks talk about, is when they first learn it, it's like, well, okay, I'm not like a designer. Bootstrap and Material are nice because they give me all this stuff out of the box. And that was one of the reasons I loved it. Right?
Because I can just say button.
Yeah, exactly. And I get a well-designed button that like looks great on my all devices when it's hovered and focused. And to do that requires a sense of like taste and design acumen that a lot of people don't have. And so, but that's not the problem that Tailwind was designed to solve. So when people were comparing Tailwind to like Bootstrap and other stuff like that, it was actually like that was a friction point, right? But then you have like libraries that make components out of Tailwind, right? That are like solving that problem. Makes me think of like Framer Motion. I think there's, D3 did a great job in their community of like making examples, because D3 is the same class of library that is low level. It doesn't give you a D3.chart. It gives you the things you need, the primitives you need to make a chart. But sometimes it can be overwhelming or hard to think about what should I do next? So Mike Bostock, the creator, he made this like blocks website. It was like it's like still super popular. And I think it would be pretty cool to have something like that for Framer Motion, I think there's a lot of room for a gallery of like pre-built things, both for idea generation and for people to actually like just crib and make their own, because there's just because the primitives are so low level, people don't realize, even I don't realize, right? I see new stuff. I'm like, oh my gosh, I never would have thought, but that's just use scroll plus use animation frame or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
Pretty interesting. It'd be cool if there was Code Sandbox is like, it's just hard. We do our demos and we link to it and it's like hard. It's like the blocks thing. Have you ever seen blocks before? Yeah. It's just so perfect. If you're,
I'm just my use case here is I go to blocks, I get inspired, and then I just turn to you and say, how do I do this?
For those of you who don't know, it's blocks like bl.ocks. I think that's the website. Like that. And you can just see all sorts of stuff with D3. And it was nice because it wasn't like, how do I run this? It only let you have one file, which was a nice, healthy constraint, because it meant if I saw a visualization I looked at that I liked, then I knew all the code was right there. And there was a culture of making sure that it wasn't like a 100-line file, right? It was like digestible or whatever. And he also spent a ton of time making tons of examples and sharing them. So, Code Sandbox is the general purpose tool, and it's like booting up, blah, blah. This was instant. You load it, instantly see it. He has this new version of it now, Observable, which is like even crazier. But I think something like that for Framer Motion could be awesome. Maybe Observable. I wonder if you could do this in Observable, because you can like import NPM packages, and Observable is made to be like shared. It's visual. It has ways to annotate and explain the code. Might be really interesting to try to do a Framer Motion demo in Observable, because it's hard when you have all the file tree and you're running a next cert. You don't need to do all that stuff. Yeah. It's all client side anyways. You know what I mean?
Yep.
That'd be pretty interesting.
Yeah. We don't need the server aspect. So you don't need the container.
Right.
And that's the stuff that causes friction.
Exactly. So you want to make it easy to copy. That's like what you want to optimize for. And, I was just, my last thought was just like, if I was the, not the maintainer, but if my job was to lead the community in Framer Motion, get people excited about it and using it more, there's nothing more inspiring than an example for visual stuff like this.
Yeah.
So that's what I would do, is like figure out the best way to share examples and to let other people in the community share examples in exactly the same way. So that every time, if I make a cool Framer Motion animation, then I know how to share it and where to share. I'm not like Code Sandbox, Stack Blitz, what are the other, Repolit, whatever. There's like a million of them, right? And then they're also discoverable in that way too, because the blocks, you could like find other people's blocks.
Super.
And they would have user pages for their blocks. I don't want you to see all of my random code demos from everything. I want you to see my frame of motion examples that have a visual preview that animate when you hover over them. You know what I mean? That'd be an awesome website.
It's interesting thinking, like, as you're describing this, I'm thinking back to basically my last few weeks of building like these apps with animation. And it's definitely like, I had watched all your videos before. So I had like, kind of like, okay, I know this is possible. I know this is possible.
Right.
And then when I would want to implement it, I'd go to the video, but I wouldn't watch the video. I would Command F, find the part, because the summaries are good. So I would find the part, read like any, like whatever your commentary on it was. But then I would immediately open the code sandbox and grab the code and I'd paste the code into my app. I wouldn't like look for the section of code. I would just grab all the code, paste it in my app, and then start tweaking it.
Yeah. That's funny. That's exactly what my pair today did as well. And I was like, oh, let's do it piece by piece. But that's just what she did by herself, and that's what people do by themselves.
Well, because you want to start with a working example,
and you connect it to you already have the context for what it looks like, and then you tweak it. But that's something else that Sandbox doesn't encourage very well, because you can't just copy a single chunk of code and expect it to work necessarily. So that is the beautiful thing about the single page. I do that all the time with D3. You copy everything in that page, even if it has imports or script tags or whatever it was at the time, it would work because it was all self-contained. So
cool.
That'd be really cool. Be a fun little weekend project.
Yeah.
And I think a gallery, just like, it's like CodePen. CodePen is made for like HTML and CSS people, like really CSS people to show off their work. Like, I know David Korshut has like all of his CodePens there, and it's cool because he has other demos of stuff that he does with XDate or whatever, but his like CSS puppy dogs and all those are on his like CodePen page. You see a visual, they're visual. So, it'd be pretty sweet to have something like that just for frame of motion.
Cool.
I'm always curious, like, how big the frame of motion community is. You know what I mean? And like how many people use it and stuff. Twitter, the For You tab, like shows you different things now.
Okay.
And because I usually just go to my like following tab, but since they surface that, I click on that sometimes if I'm running out of stuff and I'm wasting time on Twitter. And sometimes I see like more Framer stuff from people I've never followed. Maybe Matt liked it or something like that. And there's people doing there's just cool stuff that people are doing. So it would be neat to just see that. But I'm always curious like how many people use it.
Cool. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Like I'm mostly just do surface level stuff. But it's easy. And once you learn a few things, like it makes your apps look good.
Oh, it definitely does.
It makes your apps look and feel good.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
It'd be even fun to have like folders or like collections, lists. Like every way I could think to animate email inbox, like a list of items or something like that. Anyways, that'd be fun.
Cool.
Awesome. I think that was a fun little topic. I say we wrap it up here. And anything we want to talk about, or I guess we'll probably have some more stuff to talk about in terms of what videos we're working on for Build UI next very soon. So yeah. Cool. All right. Hey, everyone, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next week.
See ya.
Bye.